Hi, it's Whitney Kurtz Ogilvy, and we're going to talk today about some simple tips for clearer writing. So let's start with some nuts and bolts, very basic stuff. The building blocks of a good paper are strong paragraphs, so we're going to talk about how to make a strong paragraph. So a strong paragraph begins and ends with important information and ideas. So you can think of it like bookends. The first thing that should go in a good paragraph is a topic sentence. And this is just a sentence that lets us know what the main idea of that paragraph is. So what is the overall point, the take-home message at the end of the day? What is the point you want to make with that paragraph? So that should be the first sentence. And then every sentence in there should relate back to that main idea. So I guess I'm getting ahead of myself. Succinctly should state the main idea of the paragraph or the connected series of paragraphs. And when I say connected series, I just mean that sometimes it might take you more than one paragraph to fully develop a main idea. So if you're going to take two paragraphs to fully develop one main point, you don't have to have a topic sentence for that second paragraph because you're still talking about the same main idea. So I guess maybe a better way to say it is that every main idea should have a topic sentence versus necessarily every paragraph having one. So it's very important that your topic sentence follow the no surprises rule. And that just means that your topic sentence shouldn't promise anything that your paragraph isn't going to deliver. So whatever you promise with that topic sentence, the rest of the sentences in there should fully develop that. So if you say you're going to do X, Y, and Z, don't just do X and Y. And the same goes, by the way, for the purpose statement of the whole paper. Whatever you promise to do in that purpose statement, you should make sure you fully fulfill in the paper. So just as everything in your entire manuscript should go like an arrow right to the bullseye of your purpose statement to develop it or illustrate it, every sentence in a paragraph should fly to the bullseye of your topic sentence to develop it, to illustrate it, or to support it. So some elements of a strong paragraph. The first is unity, and that means that a paragraph should focus on one main idea. You don't want to try to do too much with one paragraph, so I think a very good rule of thumb is to stick to one main idea per paragraph. The second element is coherence, which means that the parts are clearly related. The sentences in the paragraph all work together to form a big picture, and of course that big picture is what you're expressing in your topic sentence. The last element of a strong paragraph is development, and that means that your main idea is supported by specific details. Those might be statistics or something interesting that you read in a study, something from your source material. It should be fully developed and fleshed out. So let's look at a sample paragraph that demonstrates these elements. And note that I have highlighted the topic sentence in pink. Short-term memory presents my inexperienced writers with another proofreading problem. Because the short-term memory can only deal with 7 plus or minus 2 items at a time, inexperienced writers often create sentences that are mixtures of sentence patterns, making their ideas seem jumbled. The latter part of the sentence often fails to mesh with the first part. For instance, subjects and verbs may not agree if more than 7 words separate them in a sentence. Because inexperienced writers are often slow readers, they frequently fail to notice their errors. The short-term memory cannot sustain words from the beginning of a sentence through to the end of that sentence. So note our topic sentences in pink. Short-term memory presents inexperienced writers with a proofreading problem. And then every other sentence in that paragraph relates back to that topic sentence and develops it. We have development, we have examples, and the green sentence that I've highlighted illustrates another important piece of advice about good writing, which is to follow the show don't tell rule, meaning examples are more powerful than explanations. So here, where she's talking about short-term memory causing problems with writing, she gives us an example of one of those problems, which is subject-verb agreement. For instance, subjects and verbs may not agree if more than 7 words separate them in a sentence. So instead of just telling us short-term memory can present us with problems in writing, she's giving us an example of one of those specific problems, which is that it can lead to problems with subject-verb agreement. So that's an example of a coherent, unified paragraph. So some more tips for strong paragraphs. Use transition words or transition phrases, sometimes even transition sentences, both within paragraphs and between paragraphs to create a logical flow of ideas. And you also want to make sure that when you're using something from a source, whether it's a direct quote, whether it's something you've paraphrased, you want to introduce, integrate, and explain your source material. Now, the next 4 slides are not mine. They're from a terrific PowerPoint presentation by the Walden University Writing Center, and you can see the full link to that in my references at the end if you'd like to go and look at that. So the Walden University Writing Center points out one common error, which they call citation salad, which I think is a terrific way to describe this. And citation salad essentially happens when the writer has failed to do what we just talked about, which is to introduce, integrate, and explain source material. So citation salad happens when we have a lot of factual information from sources kind of thrown together in a paragraph without any kind of commentary or common thread. There's no connective tissue there to tell us what all these things have to do with each other, and there's no overall main point that they're making. So let's look at this example of a citation salad. Author X argued that the cost of public transportation in the Midwest affected student participation in after-school activities. Author Y reported that 60% of high school students in the United States relied on school buses to get home in 2011. According to author Z, in a study of after-school program attendance, most of the participants received rides home from parents or friends. Okay, so we've got a lot of good information here. We've got that the cost of public transport affected student participation in after-school activities. We've got 60% of high school students needing buses to get home. We've got after-school program attendance, receiving rides home from parents or friends. So it's a lot of information. We can kind of see that it's about the same kind of topic. You know, we're talking about students, and we're talking about transportation, and we're talking about after school activities. But as I said, there's no connective tissue here. There's no commentary on any of these statistics. There's nothing to connect the dots for us, and there's no topic sentence. There's no overall main idea. So that's a problem. That's going to be confusing to readers. So how might we fix it? Now this is the same paragraph with some additions that I've underlined here. Multiple studies indicate a link between transportation availability and student engagement in extracurricular activities. Now we have a topic sentence, which is there's a link between transportation availability and student engagement in extracurricular activities. So we're off to a better start already. Author X has argued that the cost of public transportation in the Midwest affects student participation in after-school activities, which echoes findings in studies across the country. For example, author Y has reported that in 2011, 60% of high school students in the United States relied on school buses to get home, meaning that the majority of students had no alternative means of getting home if they decided to stay after regular school hours. According to author Z, in a study of after-school program attendance, most of the participants received rides home from parents or friends. In addition to transportation availability, researchers have noted a strong correlation between student participation in extracurricular activities and parental involvement. Okay, so let's look at the new additions here. So first we've got our topic sentence, and then I like this first addition here after this first piece of information from a source, which echoes findings in studies across the country. Now that lets us know that A, there's a great deal of an evidence base for that piece of information that we're getting, that the cost of public transportation affects whether students can participate in after-school stuff. It also tells us we're getting ready to hear some more statistics, right, and some more source information. So, and then notice they've also added that for example there, which I think is very good. That's a transition phrase, and transition phrases can do a lot to smooth out the organizational flow of a paragraph. Now notice that the second addition is a commentary on what we've just learned. So 60% of high school students relied on school buses to get home in 2011, meaning that the majority of students had no alternative means of getting home if they decided to stay after school because most people are taking the bus. So that establishes that this is a problem, right? So obviously that's important. If you're talking about an issue, you need to show us that this issue exists, that there is in fact a problem. And then the last thing that we've added is what I believe is probably a transition sentence, and my guess is that the next paragraph in this essay would be about student participation in extracurricular activities and parental involvement. So I like that there's sort of a transition sentence there at the end. You can bet that that's what that next paragraph is going to be about. And then notice that, like every good transition sentence, it also refers briefly back to what we've just learned. In addition to transportation availability, now that refers right back to what we've just talked about. Researchers have noticed a strong correlation between this other thing, and that's looking forward to the next paragraph. That's what a good transition sentence should do. It should look backward to what we've just learned and then look forward to the next thing we're going to learn. So another common problem that we see is what the Walden University folks are calling plop quotations. I like to call them airdropped quotes, but they call them plop quotes. Plop quotes are quotes that are just plopped. They're plunked down. They don't get introduced. There's no commentary on them. They're not introduced, integrated, and explained. So here's an example. Many educators and community members have expressed frustration about the lack of financial support for arts education. Quote, the arts and related businesses are responsible for billions of dollars in cultural exports for this country, end quote. Well, first of all, that's a two-sentence paragraph, so that's a problem. You're not going to develop a main idea fully in two sentences. But second of all, that quote is just plunked down. We don't know who this person is. We don't know what the context for that quote is. We don't have any kind of commentary or reaction to the quote. So how might we fix it? So here we go. Look at the underline. That's the new stuff. So we've got our topic sentence about educators and community members expressing frustration about a lack of financial support for the arts. And then we have, in a prepared statement at a congressional hearing on arts funding, Seegers stated that, and then we have our quote. So that's introduce. It's as simple as that. And you don't even have to go that far. You could just say, according to Seegers, or Seegers has stated, however you want to handle it, but some kind of introduction to let us know that this is going to be a quote, so it's not so jarring. And then once we finish our quote, now we've got a statement of reaction. Therefore, it is in the government's best interest to strengthen arts education rather than allowing this funding to continue to diminish. So we have a quote now that is introduced, integrated, and explained. Much better. Now you can check yourself with all of this, and I suggest that you do. As you write and as you revise, check yourself when you look at your paragraphs. Do I have a topic sentence? Does my paragraph develop that topic sentence completely? Is it unified? Am I trying to do too much in this paragraph, or am I sticking to one main idea? Is it coherent, meaning are all the sentences relating to each other and relating back to that topic sentence? So there's nothing in there that's like that Sesame Street, one of these things is not like the other. We don't want that. We want it all unified and coherent. Make sure you don't have plop quotes or citation salad. Make sure your source material, whether it's a quote, a statistic, a paraphrase, is introduced, integrated, and explained. So let's move on to some revision tips, ways to be a better self-editor. This is a very, very important skill set to learn. And the most important thing to understand about revision is that it's an essential part of the writing process. So if you're needing to go back and revise your paper, that just means you're a writer. That doesn't mean you're a bad writer. If you talk to anybody who's a successful writer in any field, they will tell you that revision is an essential part of the process for absolutely everybody. And as a matter of fact, if you have a good revision process, it's more likely to mean that you're a good writer because it means you have a solid process. You understand that writing is not an end product, but a thinking process. And multiple revisions, in addition to helping you catch mistakes with the surface stuff like grammar and punctuation, multiple revisions also generate ideas because it is a thinking process. So as you're writing, you're thinking, and you're going to hit upon ideas that you never would have had if you hadn't engaged in that revision process. So don't think of revision as something you have to do if you're a bad writer. It's just the opposite. So revision tip number 1 is to take a break from your work. We can get so close to what we're writing that we can't see it anymore. We start to obsess about the little details and miss the big picture or vice versa. So take as long as you can away from your paper, a couple days at least, but ideally longer, and that's going to help you come back to that paper with fresh eyes. I'm sure we've probably all had this experience where we've looked at something that we wrote a long time ago and we think, oh my gosh, how did I think that sentence made sense? And that's what happens when we take a break. We're able to see it with completely fresh eyes and see things that we never saw before. So I'm going to hang out for a second right now because I'm about to hit my 15-minute limit. So we'll start with part 2 in just a moment.